Hi everyone, Chop the Knee, Chop Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of the new Courtney Barnett album, Tell Me How You Really Feel. This is the latest album from Australian indie and garage rocker from singer-songwriter Courtney Barnett, whose breakout album in 2015 was turning heads across the music underground. Sometimes I sit and think, and sometimes I just sit, which is probably about as fun to watch as it was to listen to. At least for me anyway. With this record, Courtney won over a lot of listeners with her frank lyricism, her diary-like narratives, her mildly rough rock instrumentation. But to my ears, most of the record just came off really plain and unambitious and mundane. It just seemed like a cult of personality record that you wouldn't really be able to appreciate unless you really loved the personality oozing out of the album. Now, it's been a few years since the release of that record, and believe it or not, I'm still curious as to where Courtney is going artistically. Because she's still a relatively new face, she still has a lot of room to progress and grow. There's no telling what direction she's going to head in. I enjoyed quite a few tracks from her collaborative record with Kurt Vile last year, and I dug some of the lead-up tracks to this new album over here as well, like the track City Looks Pretty, which is a driving, groovy garage rock tune with sweet harmonized guitar leads, some noisy effects, and heavy themes of isolation coming out of the lyrics. This track, in comparison with a lot of Courtney's earlier work, is much brighter and more dense from an instrumental standpoint, and Courtney is coming off just a bit more compelling as a vocalist. Like, the singing has just a tad bit more conviction, just slightly more emotionally captivating, as well as the song Nameless, Faceless, which to me read as like an ode to not only the gender divide, but also this feeling of paranoia one might get when walking in the park at night alone. Obviously, with Barnett taking a strong female perspective on this one and delivering gritty details like holding her keys between her fingers so she can kind of use them as a weapon. I also love the kind of carefree, jangly guitar chords on the verse that really kind of contrast with the narrative of the song itself, and the wild descending guitar chords and leads that kind of transition us out of the hook that really kind of bring that strong feeling of paranoia and anxiety. Generally across this record, they're just improvements. Courtney's songwriting this time around seems more defined, more structured. The lyrics on this thing are much less rambly, which you can kind of tell just given the fact that the songs generally on this record are much shorter than their predecessor. Not a single track here spans past 5 minutes. It seems like Courtney is focusing more on kind of organizing her thoughts and getting to the point. Nothing on the record really overstays its welcome, even if that prevents Courtney from expounding on a theme that maybe needed some more attention. Like on the feminist rager on this record, I'm Not Your Mother, which kind of clocks in at a very brief 1 minute and 50 seconds. But still, the instrumentals on this record easily are more detailed. It seems like there's more of an emphasis on just kind of making the hooks on this thing pop and flourish and blossom. Easily, this record is more tuneful than its predecessor. The song Need a Little Time is a prime example of that. The song about love on the rocks and separation, and it's kind of a jangly, sad pop rock tune reminiscent of like 90s radio rock. For whatever reason, I'm like getting a real strong
Counting Crows
vibe off of this track, but with a grungier edge and a more depressing mood. The production and performances on this thing are pretty good. They hit a nice momentum and sound relatively organic. Lyrically, it seems like Courtney is focusing more on specific topics within a given track than she was prior. Whether she's beating herself up and questioning her own intelligence on the track Crippling Self-Doubt, or trying to build her and her audience up on the track Help Yourself. Still, despite all the praise that I can give this album, I still feel like generally this is a very dime a dozen indie rock record with a lot of very so-so vocal performances. And despite trying to dive more deeply into her own melancholy, there's just very little that shows up in the lyrics in terms of nuance and detail. To me, Courtney's music still comes off pretty humdrum. And even though in some respects this is a more personal record than her previous one, it still feels like she's keeping listeners at arm's length and there's a real lack of intimacy coming out of the songs and the lyrics. It just seems like there's not a whole lot at stake on a lot of these tracks. And even though there are flashes in the pan and bright spots, I do think there is a lot to be desired vocally on this record in terms of conviction, because a lot of these tracks do still kind of fall flat emotionally, narratively. Everything in Courtney's music seems to have gotten a little bit brighter and a little bit more complex, except for Courtney herself. In fact, there are some moments on this record where I actually think she drowns in the slightly more aggressive drums and guitars a bit. So again, while there have been some very nice changes made to Courtney's sound since her last full-length album, I feel like the alterations that have been brought to the table here have only brought her music so far. I'm feeling a decent 2 strong 6 on this one. Transition, have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head is a video that you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Courtney Barnett, forever.